Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Timothy Lee, and I'm a mining analyst here at Red Cloud Securities. We welcome Vince Sorace, President and CEO of Kutcho Copper. He will speak to us about Kutcho's namesake copper, zinc, plus gold and silver project located in British Columbia. Vince, you will have 15 minutes, and then we'll have a 5-minute Q&A at the end of the session. And attendees, please feel free to ask questions using the Q&A link below. Take it away, Vince.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Here to talk about the Kutcho Copper project. Just a little history. This project's been around for quite some time. It really saw the start of its progress in the early 2000s with a junior called Western Celtic that consolidated some land positions and moved it forward to a PEA. It was subsequently acquired by a company called Sherwood Copper. That was with Stephen Quinn at the helm. He was currently had just put Minto into production and was looking at Kutcho next. Then in the mid to late 2000s, Sherwood and Capstone Copper merged. The parties, Stephen Quinn and Darren Pilot, had kind of two different views on how the company was going to move forward. Darren wanted to take bigger bites, went on to acquire Santo Domingo and Pinto Valley. So Kutcho Copper essentially got shelved. They completed a pre-feasibility study in 2010, and that's where it got left. The project didn't advance further until we started looking at it. I was aware of the asset, and our group started looking at it in 2016. And negotiated a transaction with Capstone to buy that from them for approximately $29 million in cash and some ownership in the vehicle that we used to acquire it. What we did in 2017 was we took the pre-feasibility study and updated it, and we posted that. That pre-feasibility study showed, and we updated CapEx and OpEx only. Showed an after-tax NPV of 265 million Canadian with an IRR of 27.6%. And so we saw a lot of opportunity in scale and other areas to improve the asset, which again just didn't really kind of come to fruition or see a lot of love through its life cycle to date. So we in 2017 we completed a deal with Wheaton Precious. It was a streaming arrangement on the precious metal component of it. I'll talk more about that shortly. But they also did a $20 million convert to help us with the acquisition price. We went on to do an additional $14 million in equity in December, closed on the transaction in middle of December 2017. The strategy of the company at that time was quickest path to feasibility study and permitting. So as we moved into 2018, we did a lot of work in the field in gathering data for the feasibility study, from metallurgical drilling to geotechnical drilling to re-engaging in all the baseline studies, and moved the project forward from there. The team that was put together for Kutcho in particular was specifically geared towards getting the project from point A to point B, and that meaning everything we needed to do, data collection, even some exploration drilling in 2018. So this technical team and management team, if you will, has extensive experience with VMSs, with taking projects through feasibility study in the capital markets. As well as the board, Stephen Quinn used to own this asset, and Bill Bennett was previously BC Mines Minister. So good contribution through legacy ownership and the permitting aspect of it as well moving forward. I won't spend too much time on market momentum in the copper space, but firm believers that in the years to come, we're going to see a robust base metals space. A little bit of our capital structure. We've got 96 million shares currently issued. Capstone retains 10% ownership, Wheaton about 7.5% ownership, and management around 5%. The Wheaton financing package, as I mentioned, it was over 100 million. So the stream arrangement they provided, it was a value of 65 million US for the precious metal component, which was 8% of the revenue, projected revenue of the project. So did not encumber the primary commodities, copper and zinc. They actually forwarded us $7 million US of that in 2018 to do the work we needed to do in the field towards feasibility. There is a $20 million US bonus payment towards expanded throughput at 4,500 tons per day to be determined. Ongoing cash payments at 20% of the applicable spot price. And the stream will decrease to 66% of silver and gold production once we've delivered the first 5.6 million ounces of silver and 50,000 ounces of gold. Where we are, northeastern BC, an extremely development-friendly region with a number of major projects in various phases of development and construction and operation, from Kemess to Red Chris to Galore. So a very, very good spot to be in British Columbia. Kutcho is basically a very accessible project, on-site infrastructure, very subtle terrain. It's accessible via a 100-kilometer long access road, which will be upgraded to a haul road. That connects to Highway 37, so that's a 400-kilometer trek down to the Port of Stewart, where our concentrates would be shipped from. We've got an existing field camp on site with an airstrip on site. And again, very benign, very subtle terrain. We're not cutting through any mountains. We're not mining off any mountains, just really soft rolling hills. So, remote, but not really remote. The most remote thing about this site is that we'll be running it off of LNG and diesel. We've looked at trade-off studies to run grid power. It doesn't quite make sense, but for the most part, easy access and subtle terrain as mentioned. Just a little bit on the geology. What's important to note is, our claim blocks, and I'll show it further later on. The Kutcho Formation in Lower Triassic rocks encompasses our claims position. Most important is that the sulfide horizon that hosts the Kutcho deposit folds and repeats multiple times through this Kutcho Formation rock. And I'll talk more about that and the opportunity there in a bit. This is what we look like, the deposits look like. So 3 primary lenses: main, sumac, and Esso. Main outcrops at surface, sumac a little bit deeper, and Esso being the deepest, about 500 meters below surface. Esso being the highest grade and the smallest to date of the bunch. And this is what the resource table looks like. So, combined resources, all deposits, measured indicated of 18 million tons, inferred of 13. You can see the main deposit in itself, measured indicated of almost 16 million tons, grading 2.28% copper equivalent. And the Esso deposit, as mentioned, smaller at 2.6 million tons, but high grade at 4.42% copper equivalent. The 2 lenses that will make that have made previous studies and will make the feasibility study will be main and Esso, sumac remaining in the inferred category, but we'll definitely be approaching that sumac lens. I think that's a fantastic opportunity to add to mine life in the future. As mentioned earlier, the economics posted from the 2017 pre-feasibility study, there's going to be an instrumental shift in the way this project looks coming up into the feasibility study for the good. So, from this perspective, I would say, what you're seeing here at 275 copper is a good, robust, high margin project. Obviously, massive leverage to the price of copper, which we've seen today. There's going to be significant shifts here. We're expecting production rate to change, mine life to change. We did extensive work on the MET program. We spent almost a year and a half on that. We've turned that completely on its head from the pre-feasibility study. Better copper recoveries with respect to that. So that again is kind of irrelevant with respect to the PFS numbers. So it's going to be quite a different feasibility study than anticipated from the PFS, and we're looking forward to that. On the MET side, I guess the most pertinent thing to note here, and probably the lower bar, because we will be blending ore from the 2 different lenses, is that it's a 26% copper concentrate. And I guess the most notable point is that it's a good, clean con. We have no nasties above penalty limits. In 2019, we filed our project description. So in terms of kind of the new process here in BC, we're at the first gate. So we're well positioned to kick off the full permitting process. We stopped there in 2019. As the next phase, we want to make sure that we can go through, I guess, completely without starting and stopping. So in 2019, as we were busy getting ready for the feasibility study, and to make sure that we have enough capital to run through the process, that was our pause. But in a very good spot, we've completed basically all of the other requirements required to kick this off and move forward very, very quickly, including our baseline studies required. We are in shared territory with Tahltan and Kaska nations. I would suggest that Tahltan is the most technical, commercial, and sophisticated First Nation in British Columbia, and Kaska very pro mining as well. Kaska and Tahltan, their latest project would have been Silvertip in their shared territory, but Tahltan, many projects currently under development and operating in their territory. So a fantastic place in BC to be, with fantastic First Nation partners, again, very pro mining. I put out a press release yesterday, which basically shows their commitment. We will be entering into IBA and CEPA negotiations with each of them moving forward. So that's a very, very strong commitment and idea of their interest levels in moving the project forward. Our work program here, I guess the one to note here is the feasibility study will be complete in and around October of this year. About mid-October is what we're targeting, which we're looking forward to. I think there will be a surprise to market there, and potentially a significant re-rate on the project. And then from there, basically, once we commence full speed on the permitting process, give or take 3 years to a shovel-ready project. So we're very, very well positioned to move this forward rapidly. Upside potential, 2 components to this. This slide outlines, I call it the brownfields potential on the project. These targets are identified. We just didn't have the capital or the wherewithal in the previous years to go at them. But all the lenses are open, down, dip, and along strike. Probably one of the biggest opportunities is the gap between Main and Sumac. That's a 500-meter gap with 1 historic drill hole into it. We have reason to believe that the mineralization continues between those 2 lenses. And point number 3 to the bottom right of your screen, ESO. There's a 300-meter section there where drill holes historically intercepted ore grade. So those are 800-meter drill holes from surface. We weren't going to chase them up, but evidence that ESO lens continues, and that that would be something that would get drilled out once you're down underground at ESO. From the greenfields perspective, lots of blue sky. So as I mentioned earlier, the shaded is the Kutcho assemblage or Kutcho formation rocks, and that where I mentioned that the folding repeats in the sulfide horizons, that's represented by the dashed lines. The big black circles are multiple kilometer spaced drill holes that were done pre-1990. Nothing's ever been followed up on, but those are massive sulfide horizons, similar to where you see the ESO, Sumac, and Main deposit reside. We did some work up in 2018 in target delineation. We've probably got about 30 targets there that we want to continue with, and you'll see us get a lot more aggressive with that in the coming year. But as the upside potential goes, wide open on this. And as most people know, when you're in a VMS district, you tend to find more than you started with. That's it for now. If anybody has any questions, please feel free to ask.
Great. Thank you very much, Vince, for the excellent presentation. We'll now open it up to questions. And attendees, you can submit questions at any time in the text box. We do have a question or two here, Vince. First, thinking long-term, what is the strategy of the company? Do you want to become a producer, or would you look to advance the project and then monetize?
There's a couple of strategies we're looking at. I do believe once we've got this feasibility study complete, Kutcho will be an M&A target. Now, there's two philosophies there we've talked about internally. One is Kutcho could make a great project for a roll-up strategy out there with projects of this ilk, kind of low capital intensity, high margin type projects. So we are looking at, and we have been looking at 2 years, acquisitions ourselves as part of this roll-up strategy. But I also think the door is going to be open for post-feasibility study. There's been a lot of eyes on this project for someone to take us out. We'll see how that unfolds. If we drive down the path of looking to put this into production, then that would be a new team that would come in. Our expertise again was to take this from point A to point B, and we'll help it down that path. And as far as expertise to build and operate mines, that would be different people that would come in to do that with Kutcho.
Great. And you had mentioned some of the permitting aspects over the course of it. What hurdles remain on the permitting side?
At this point, it's just a process. So, we've, per my press release yesterday with the nations, you've seen that we've got the blessing of the nations to move forward with these negotiations. These are economic participation agreement negotiations. So that's critical and crucial from that perspective. And really at this point, don't see any red flags. It's really just going to be moving through the process and getting it done. Great.
And financing wise, what kind of package or what kind of financing needs are there still remaining to move the project forward?
The financing needs at this point would be primarily for permitting. And, at this point, as, we struggled through base metal markets in 2018, 2019, and into 2020, really started to come to life mid-2020. So, for those quiet years, I was, cautious of managing our cap table, not diluting too much. And as we were waiting to kick off our feasibility study, which we did late last year. So we raised some money late last year to do that. And at this point, I've been, it's, a very different market right now. I must say there's a lot of people interested in Kutcho and financing Kutcho. I've done a couple of smaller financings in the last few months, and that's more for, the strategic purpose of acquiring that royalty back and moving the project through feasibility study. I am still kind of cognizant of managing my cap table. I think, and I believe there's going to be a significant re-rate after feasibility. And that'll be in the fall. And at that point is when I would entertain looking at different avenues for capital, whether it be strategic capital or equity financings in the market. But I'm expecting to do that, higher prices than I am today. And that would be the capital to really start driving this thing firmly through the permitting process.
Great. Well, unless there are any other questions, I'll ask one question kind of generally here that could help finish things off. What news do we expect kind of to summarize from Kutcho over the coming weeks and months here?
There'll be, I believe, a pretty significant piece of news in the next, call it week and a half to 2 weeks. It'll be a significant update to where we're at in the feasibility study. We've been at this for some time, and we'll be reporting on some findings and potentially some significant shifts technically with the project that I think the market will be fond of. So look for that update in the coming few weeks, and some other stuff we're working on over the coming months ahead of the fees. But so yeah, that update will explain a lot to the direction that we're heading.
Great. All right. Well, that about wraps it up here time-wise. Thank you again, Vince, for the excellent presentation today, and thank you attendees for your time and participation today as well. This wraps up the second day of our Green Energy Metals Conference. EVs are made of these. We want to thank all the presenters and attendees. Please join us tomorrow afternoon at 2 p.m. Eastern Time when Red Cloud's webinar series continues with a presentation by White Horse Gold Corp. Have a great rest of your day.